Hello, everybody! I am Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming, and it's time to give my roundup for the Steam Autumn Sale. What to keep your eye out for in a sea of sales and giant discounts. And let's just get right on into it, shall we? Up first is a game that is in contention for Game of the Year for me, and that is Metaphor Refantazio, the latest release from Atlus, who will be showing up a few times in this video. In a lot of ways, I view Metaphor Refantazio to be the magnum opus of Atlus. It is a turn-based RPG, utilizing the calendar system popularized in their other series, Persona, but with a combat system that is far more in line with, say, Shin Megami Tensei. And in a lot of ways, Metaphor Refantazio does its own unique thing in a very excellent manner, but is also the culmination, and honestly, some of the best iteration on a lot of mechanics that Atlus has popularized throughout their tenure. Metaphor Refantazio is excellently paced, with an amazing and engaging cast of characters, a beautiful soundtrack that is unlike any that I've ever heard before, a beautiful painted aesthetic, and it's just a great time overall. There is a demo available for the game, but the game itself is also, funnily enough, on a 25% discount for $52.49. Now, maybe you've played Metaphor Refantazio, or you're a big Persona fan. Metaphor isn't the only game Atlus has on sale right now. Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne and Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance are both on sale on Steam right now. While I haven't played 3 myself, I have played a bit of 5, though that was back on the original version on the Switch. It is this great post-apocalyptic art style and aesthetic that, while it does tell a story, is far more focused on an engaging turn-based RPG experience. It's far more gameplay focused and forward. It is also renowned for its difficulty, though I didn't personally experience it that badly with SMT5. I can't speak for Vengeance, because Vengeance does the thing that Atlus is rather known to do, and that is re-release a game, but with more content. And that is what Vengeance is. It provides an entire other route and revamps a bunch of systems. And I hear from people in my community that Vengeance is pretty much SMT5, but way better. Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne is an HD remaster of, well, Shin Megami Tensei 3. Not the most popular RPG of all time, but it does have its cult following. And if you enjoy the combat from Metaphor Refantazio, I don't see why you wouldn't enjoy Shin Megami Tensei, where it all kinda came from. SMT3 Nocturne HD Remastered is 70% off for $14.99, and Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance is 40% off for $35.99. Let's wrap up our little Atlus arc here with Persona. You'll never see it coming. Persona 3 Reload, Persona 4 Golden, and Persona 5 Royal are all on discount right now. And I love all of these games. I think they're incredible. While the combat isn't necessarily identical to SMT5 or SMT in general, it has its own charm to it, targeting enemy weaknesses so that you can gain an additional turn, or possibly swap that turn to another party member. In the Persona games, you take on the role of a high schooler who is thrust into the middle of a whole supernatural scenario. 3 deals with death, 4 deals with entering the TV world to figure out a giant murder mystery that's also supernatural. In Persona 5, you form a coalition called the Phantom Thieves to change the hearts of corrupt adults and officials. These games will take up a lot of hours, but they are brilliantly paced, amazing music, the combat is super fun, though I do personally believe Persona 5 Royal does dungeon design the best. My opinion, I think Persona 3 Reload has the best combat in Persona. Whereas for me, Persona 4 Golden is just a vibe, with my favorite cast of characters, though P3 is right up there for me. Honestly, you kinda can't go wrong here. They're emotional, story-focused and forward, and utilize a brilliant dichotomy between the dungeon-crawling, turn-based RPG goodness alongside social simulator elements, where you're budgeting time, you're scheduling yourself on this calendar system to build up and flesh out relationships with other characters or your own skill set. There's honestly nothing really like Persona. There's a reason it's become so popular. It just really works. Persona 3 Reload is 50% off for $34.99, Persona 4 Golden is 40% off for $11.99, and Persona 5 Royal is 60% off for $23.99. Okay, who doesn't like Batman? Let's be fair here. The Arkham games are renowned for being the definitive Batman experience in video game form. And I played Arkham City a ton as a kid, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. The game and the series overall have a really dark tone going for them, but I think it works. And there's a ton of things that can be done, especially in the game that I played, Arkham City. The combat won't be for everyone, as it can devolve to just spamming the Y button to counter a lot, but there's a reason these games have seemingly stood the test of time. If you like Batman, you owe it to yourself to at least try out these games, and they're on a crazy discount. The entire Arkham collection is 85% off at $8.99, and that gets you Arkham Asylum Game of the Year, Arkham City Game of the Year, and Arkham Knight Season Pass. And if you just want one of those games, Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and Arkham Knight are all 80% off at just $3.99 by themselves. So either re-experience your childhood or embrace the Batman. And now for something completely different. Dragon Quest XI Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition. Besides being an absolute mouthful, and I didn't even get everything, it's Dragon Quest XI S Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition. Yeah, the name's a mouthful, but I am also of the opinion that I think this is one of the best RPGs and JRPGs that have come out in like the last decade or so. It's colorful, it's whimsical, it's Dragon Quest, with a brilliant turn-based combat system, an open world that is so colorful and filled with life, but the story can also get really dark and emotional, and they do a great balancing act. It's an amazing adventure to go on, filled with a bunch of great characters, and there's a reason that I talk about this game in like most of these Steam sale videos, because if you enjoy JRPGs, I think you owe it to yourself to try Dragon Quest XI, and while a lot of the talk for Dragon Quest right now may be on Dragon Quest 3, because the HD 2D remake for that just came out, Dragon Quest XI is amazing by itself, and if you crave that old pixel art style, there's a mode where you can play the entire game in that pixel art style. It's so whimsical and imaginative, and the game just has fun with itself. It does have a demo, so if you want to try it out there, you can, but the game itself is also 50% off for $19.99. Speaking of games that I won't shut up about, Nier Automata. It's my favorite game of all time for a very good reason. I think of all the games that I've played and experienced, no game intertwined story, narration, with its gameplay as well and as effectively as Nier Automata, full stop. I love this game, sincerely. I love how it changes perspective so often. I love how it makes use of the fact that it's a video game to not only tell a story, but to tell a story in a way that is unique to the medium. There's a reason the anime has had to make so many drastic changes and departures from the game, because Nier Automata, in the way that it's constructed as a game, can only be told as a game in the way that it was. And I think it does a great job of that. It's a ton of fun as well. The gameplay is great. It's Platinum Games, and if you're familiar with them, yeah, it's what you would expect out of Platinum in their heyday. It's fast-paced and hectic. It's hack and slash goodness. And you have this pod companion that you can customize with various abilities, like slamming down giant laser hammers onto the arena, sending the enemy machines flying in all directions, shooting giant laser beams, slowing down time, summoning black holes, and that's on top of the customization you get as your playable character to begin with. There's so many different playstyles, so many amazing and enriching side quests that add to the experience but aren't mandatory, so many fun ways to play, so many fun enemies in this game to fight, and so many great stories with these characters, and so many great locations. I love Nier Automata. It's my favorite game of all time. And let's not forget about Nier Replicant. Sure, it's a bit more rough around the edges than, say, Nier Automata, but I think it also has its own unique strengths. It has one of my favorite cast of characters of any game ever. And while I think Automata does repeated playthroughs in a more engaging fashion than Nier Replicant also, just like Automata, has a story that will hold itself in my heart for as long as I live. I love Replicant. I love its story. I love its music. I love its characters. I love the gameplay. Good gods, is it so much fun. And is the story so memorable, and the characters so engrossing and emotional. Absolutely, it's a bit more rough around the edges, but there's plenty of people out there that prefer Replicant to Automata for whatever reason. Both these games are great. Nier Replicant version, bear with me here, 0.1.22474487139, no, I'm not kidding, has a combat system that is very similar to Nier Automata, but with a different vibe, more magical, more fantasy than the sci-fi post-apocalyptic landscape of Nier Automata, but with a story that is just as human and just as emotional and just as gripping. It is 60% off for $23.99, and Nier Automata is also 60% off, but for $15.99. Dragon's Dogma 2 was one of the more controversial releases of 2024, but I do think it has an audience, and I want to give it a shout out here, because while it didn't particularly grip me all that much, if you have a good enough of a PC, because this thing is extremely CPU intensive, the game does have fun combat. It's a beautiful game as well, and while it may be very light on story, if you crave a more open-ended RPG adventure, one, I would also go check out Dragon's Dogma 1, but if you really want to check out Dragon's Dogma 2, it is on sale for $39.89. With Square Enix finally embracing going multi-platform now, Final Fantasy XVI is now on PC and is also on Steam, and it was one of my favorite games of 2023. And I've played the demo on Steam, and while my PC is a bit of a powerhouse, yeah, I still love Final Fantasy XVI. What an amazing game this is. It's not perfect, don't get me wrong, and it is also very unique, with a combat system that is far more in line with, say, Devil May Cry than traditional turn-based RPG goodness Final Fantasy was known for back in the day. There's also a lot of elements in 16 that, while they feel different, also feel Final Fantasy. The game is big, bombastic, and over the top. It's dark and emotional and very mature. But there are few games out there that have scenes that is as hype as in Final Fantasy XVI. The game does the giant icon fights and encounters so well. With an amazing cast of characters, I love Clive. I think he's one of my favorite protagonists in all of Final Fantasy. And while I think the combat gets a bit repetitive near the end, for the most part, it is really good. It's not perfect, but when you get it right, it is very fun and satisfying. And also very flashy, chaining together various iconic abilities and elemental abilities for giant bouts of damage. When you hit parries, you feel good. When you hit those dodges, you also feel good. The game lets you replay each of the stages to try and gain as much score as possible if you just want to practice. The game is just really good. And it has an amazing soundtrack, by the way. Find the Flame is absolute fire. The game does have a demo, so if you're unsure about whether or not your PC will run this thing, check out the demo, because your progress will carry over to the base game. But the game itself is 25% off for $37.49, but if you want all the DLC, which I think is fine, has some really cool fights, but if you're looking for story, it's like okay. But the complete edition with the DLC is 25% off for $52.49. I love Final Fantasy VII. I just do. So let's round out this little Square Enix mini-arc we have going on here with Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate, the first part in the Remake Trilogy of games for Final Fantasy VII. I'm a firm believer that Final Fantasy VII Remake is brilliant, and while it's not perfect, the side content does leave a bit to be desired. The game that is there is super fun and engaging and engrossing. The voice acting is over the top, and it's all the better for it. The game, Remake, and also Rebirth when that eventually comes to PC, nails the vibe of Final Fantasy VII, and it does it so well. It knows when it needs to be over the top and goofy, like having an entire, dance section, and it knows when it needs to beat you over the head with emotion, and it does so in a very effective way. The characters are lovable, the cutscenes are gorgeous, the world is engrossing and fun and great, and there's a bunch of twists and turns in Final Fantasy VII Remake that just make the story so compelling, and serves as an excellent foundation for Rebirth when that eventually comes to PC. And I love the Yuffie DLC they added for Remake. It's so dang good, and does a great job of bringing Yuffie into the story and making her feel as if she belongs as a main character, not just an optional character you can get for side content in the base game, or in the original game. And the combat system of the Remake Trilogy is so good. It is real-time action, but with the ATB system returning, so you build up the gauge, attacking enemies, doing whatnot, and then when you want to spend your ATB on items or abilities or spells, the time slows to a crawl, so it feels turn-based in that regard, with amazing music, visuals, characters, and combat, and the side content that is there is really fun, at least for the most part. I loved Final Fantasy VII ever since I played the original, and I fell in love with Remake, and doubly so when it comes to Rebirth. But if you want to get started and prepare yourself for when Rebirth does come to PC, Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate is 50% off for $34.99. Give it to me. That thing. Your Dark Soul. But have you beaten Dark Souls, though? Oh my god. I love FromSoft, and I love Dark Souls. I love Dark Souls 1. Look, 2 is okay. But I love Dark Souls 3 as well. They can be hard, they can be janky, but I find these games to be, in a weird way, really relaxing. And it's something that FromSoft does so well, and that is create a compelling atmosphere and a world that is brilliantly and logically put together, ignore Dark Souls 2, with a bunch of memorable boss fights that can be hit or miss, let's be fair here. I don't think you'll have that many people that try and defend Bed of Chaos, but these are great RPGs with a bunch of different builds that you can play with and play around with to tackle the world of Dark Souls in your own way. And while absolutely they can be very stressful experiences, especially if you're not used to how FromSoft do things, I think if you are open to it, these games can be super just fun and compelling and relaxing. So let's run the gauntlet here. Dark Souls Remastered is 50% off at $19.99. Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin is 50% off at $19.99. And Dark Souls 3 is 50% off for $29.99. And Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, which is from FromSoft, but is far more focused on parrying and countering. Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is 50% off for $29.99. And circling back to Dark Souls 3 for a quick second here, if you want the deluxe edition, which comes with the season pass, that being the DLC, that is 50% off for $42.49. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 is a beautiful throwback to the era of shooter games that we had in the late 2000s and early 2010s. A short but compelling campaign alongside a bevy of co-op missions and an okay multiplayer. Like, it's fun, but there's just not much to it for me. Space Marine 2 is over the top, epic, fun, and absolutely brutal. You would believe that this is a shooter game because it has shooter elements to it, but it's also like 50% action game. There's a lot of emphasis on parrying attacks, dodging enemy attacks, and landing your own melee attacks and counters. And this game is so much fun with a buddy, especially the main campaign. Just running that with co-op is so good. There's a lot of customization, a lot of progression in this game. The story is solidly okay, and I imagine if you're a big 40k fan, one, you probably already played this, but you would appreciate a lot of the references in here. But if you are not, well, a lot of the references may just go over the head of you. The game is so over the top and cool that I think you'll just vibe along despite all of that, because I did. Giant floating gothic cathedrals in space, fighting giant space bugs and the forces of chaos with a giant hammer and a jetpack or a lightning sword and whatnot, with bolters and chain swords, and oh my goodness, it's great. Space Marine 2 Standard Edition is 20% off for $47.99. Lies of P is one of those games that I've started and I really need to find time to go back to and actually beat, because this game is so charming and fun. It's Pinocchio, and you wouldn't expect it to be as dark and macabre as it actually is, but this game in a lot of ways is the spiritual successor to Bloodborne, because at this rate we'll just never see that game on PC, and if you crave another game in that Bloodborne style, Lies of P does a really good job. I mean, it is a Soulsborne-like, but with a bunch of really cool designs and combat that feels really good and smooth and fluid. But like, unfortunately, I don't think your nose grows every time you tell a lie in this game, so it's kind of a 0 out of 10 because of that. But if you still want to play the game anyways, it is 40% off for $35.99. Let this be an example that cyberbullying works. There was so many people back during the summer sale that told me about Kingdom Come Deliverance and that it was a grand sin that I did not include it in my list back then. Well, I'm including it now, people. Though I will say I haven't personally played the game. The deal is so kinda crazy that I might as well highlight it. It's an open world, first-person RPG, set during the days of the Holy Roman Empire. It's a medieval fantasy, and if you ever wanted to give the game a look, it's 90% off for $2.99. Pretty good deal. The tale of Palworld is one of ups and downs, and also Nintendo lawsuits apparently. But I mean, I put a good few hours into this game, and I think it has a lot of charm unique to its own. It's an open world survival game where you build your own base and have your pal employees, let's say, run the day-to-day operations, grinding resources for you or constructing various things so that you can go out into the world, hunt down other pals, and possibly employ them into your service. You can fight alongside your pals, construct legit guns and rocket launchers, or ride around giant dragons and whatnot. The game is over the top and wild. And if you love, like, open world survival games, genuinely check out Palworld. Whatever you want to call this game, and whatever you make of it, this game is absolutely imaginative. And while open world survival games won't be for everyone, they can be a very chill vibe. Palworld is no exception here. It's 25% off for $22.49. If you love Star Wars and you love Dark Souls and Souls-like-esque games, Jedi Fallen Order is absolutely phenomenal. I played the game and I'm so glad I did. It's just a really good time. Good exploration, a really competent story, good characters, and I think the gameplay is super fun. Look, it's super fun and compelling, slaughtering waves of stormtroopers or just force pushing them off a cliff. That will never get old, and the game is pretty and it's fun. It does have its difficulty spikes, like that one frog near the beginning, Ogdo-Bogdo, whatever that thing was called. I think Satan himself crafted that one up. It's a great Star Wars adventure, and honestly, as someone who's become very disillusioned with Star Wars in like the last decade or so, this re-sparked my interest quite a bit. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is 90% off for $3.99. And for a game as good as this, that's a really good deal. And if you want the Jedi bundle that has the sequel Jedi Survivor, that's 80% off for $21.48, and you get both Jedi Fallen Order and the sequel Jedi Survivor. They say don't fear the Reaper, well don't fear the Witcher. And we're just going to pretend that was funny. The Witcher is one of my favorite gaming series out there. Filled with a bunch of content, I think if you're an RPG fan, you owe it to yourself to at least try out The Witcher. The Witcher 2 is more small scale and compact in comparison to its open world success of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. However, both games tell a very compelling story with plenty of player choice, great combat systems, and one of my favorite protagonists to ever grace the medium. You play as the Witcher, or at least a Witcher, basically a genetically modified monster hunter who crafts potions, various brews, and poisons while combining with his own magic and his dual swords, one of steel, one of silver depending upon what he's fighting, to take down both monster and humans, and sometimes they're the same thing. These are very mature games, and I also think they're some of the best immersive experiences in the medium. They're great. You can get the entire Witcher Trilogy. I think The Witcher 1 though has aged quite a bit, let's say, and put it nicely. The Witcher Trilogy is 81% off for $13.02, where you get The Witcher 1, 2, and 3. Witcher 3 Wild Hunt by itself is 75% off for $9.99, and The Witcher 2 is 85% off for $2.99. Insane value here. These games are packed with content and are super cheap. Look, I had to talk about Halo. It's one of my favorite series in all of gaming. I love Halo. To me, when you say FPS game, I think of Halo. And while I'm hoping for the best out of Halo Studios with the future of Halo, looking back to its past with the Master Chief Collection, it's been up and down, but I think the current state of Master Chief Collection is too good to pass up. These are some of the best FPS games ever made, and I would argue they are the best FPS games ever made, all in one package. There's few things like Halo lore and becoming obsessed with it, and Halo Combat Evolved 2, 3, Reach, Halo 3 ODST, and Halo 4, the games that are part of the Master Chief Collection, tell an extremely compelling, well-paced narrative that I hope we see makes a comeback in the future. Halo the Master Chief Collection is 75% off for $9.99. And remember, you get Halo Combat Evolved, Halo Reach, Halo 2, Halo 3, Halo 3 ODST, and Halo 4. And some pretty good multiplayer alongside those single-player experiences, and you get Firefight, which is a round-based horde mode. It's super good and fun and compelling. Not only go start the fight, but then finish it. For our final game of the video, we have Terraria. This game is way more than just simply 2D Minecraft, though if you want that experience, you will get it here. Though there is so much more to this game, a whole host of over-the-top boss fights and enemy design and locations to explore. They've added so much to this game over the years. And if you like those kinds of games where you go out into a world, gather resources, build your own base, and in the case of Terraria, fight a whole host of enemies and bosses, and you just want a game to sink a whole host of hours into, Terraria is a really good pick for that. It's an oldie, but it's a goodie, and it's 50% off for $4.99. These are by no means the only games on sale with the Steam Autumn Sale for 2024, but these are some of my choicest picks, and the things that I think you should keep an eye out for. So in the comments down below, tell me what it is you picked up or are looking to pick up. Personally, I picked up Shin Megami Tensei 3 and 5, and I'm very much looking forward to sinking my teeth into those games. So if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. It would really help the channel out and help support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.